Now I know what you're thinking, viewer who did not read the thumbnail or title of the video. You're thinking, wow, 8mm Mauser Man, you just dumped like $40 worth of ammo. Didn't anyone tell you that there's this ammo shortage going on? Well, dear viewer, do I have something special to show you today. So what's in this gun right now is a CMMG 22 conversion kit. So I can fire 22 long rifle out of this AR-15 chambered in 5.56 or 223. Now what I want to show you is a lot more than just me mag dumping into trash. That's not a very helpful review for you. This is by no means the first review on YouTube of the CMMG 22 long rifle AR-15 conversion kit. However, I do think that it will be the most comprehensive. There were a lot of questions that I had when I bought this kit that when I looked on YouTube I did not see. So we're going to be talking about those things as well as the standard review things. So it comes in the box with the conversion kit itself, the replacement bolt, a little rubber cover that goes over that casing. You want to protect that because if you dropped this you could dent it and that would cause some issues. And then you can get some that come with 1 magazine, some that come with 3 magazines, and then those magazine version come in 10-round magazines, or I have the 25-round magazines. So there is not a single 30-round magazine displayed in this YouTube video. All magazines shown have 25 rounds or less. Now let's talk about that chronograph data first. So the 2 rifles that I used this kit in on the chronograph testing was this Savage Model 64 that has a 21-inch barrel, and this M16A1 type rifle that has a 20-inch barrel. I couldn't get exactly the same barrel length with the guns that I had available, but there's only a 1-inch difference, and so there shouldn't be any real differences there. Now, what I was curious about with this test is that this 22 conversion kit has a bit of space in it where you can tell that the carbon has gone around the outside of that little case. So that carbon outside of that little case area means that gas is escaping around the outside. I was curious, is that going to lower the velocity of this kit? 1228. 1262. 1201. 1198. 1254. 1232. 1244. 1252. 1263. That should be enough. 1220. 1240. 1231. 1223. 1263. 1261. 1256. And that should be enough there. Well, when I tested it with the Savage, I got an average velocity of 1,242 feet per second, and with the M16, I had an average velocity of 1,237 feet per second. So that is a 5 feet per second difference in the averages between these two guns. So these averages are right about the same, and so there shouldn't really be any appreciable difference in velocity when you shoot through this CMMG conversion kit. This is with the guns that I tested. Of course, different guns and different barrels and different manufacturers may just show some slight variations there, but with the guns that I tested, it looks like you don't really lose any velocity with the 22 long rifle when you shoot it through the conversion kit. With accuracy, I had 2 questions. 1, how does the accuracy of this 22 long rifle conversion kit compare to a standard purpose-built 22 long rifle? 2, how does the accuracy with this 22 long rifle conversion kit compare to standard training 223 or 5.56 ammunition shot out of the same rifle? Well, the really simple answer to that is, So, let's find out. For a basis of comparison, we're going to start with a Savage Model 64. This is known to be a fairly accurate rifle, and so I thought I would test it. Now, I do want to give a quick disclaimer. This does have a scope on it, So that will affect the results to some degree, but we're only at 50 yards, so it shouldn't affect it too much. 64, we're just going to shoot 2 5-shot groups. The first one with Aguila Super Extra, and then the second with CCI Stingers. So I also have some Norma 223 we're going to shoot at the target, and that should give us another baseline as well, because that is the ammunition that this rifle was made for. I made the mistake of not switching this rifle back to its 200/50 yard zero, so it is stuck at the 300 yard zero, and that is why this is a little bit of a high group. So I'll stick with that for the rest of the video, just so you can see the point of impact shift with this ammo and not just the accuracy change. All right, so CMMG, the manufacturer, said to not use non-plated ammunition with their conversion kit. So I am going to follow them on that because they told me not to. However, I am testing both hollow point ammunition and round nose ammunition, because they did say they recommend round nose for probably for reliability, but that hollow point is acceptable. So that's what I'm going to test today. What we have, and this is the order we're going to shoot it, is Aguila Super Extra round nose, Aguila Super Extra hollow point. The round nose is 40 grain and the hollow point is 38 grain. Then we have a Remington Golden Bullet. This is a 36 grain hollow point. Arms Core 36 grain hollow point ammunition. Federal 45 grain round nose ammunition. CCI Stinger varmint ammunition, and Herder's 36 grain plated hollow points. My testing plan with all of these ammos is to first accuracy test them. So we are just going to shoot a 5-shot group at 50 yards to accuracy test them. Then after that, we're going to do at least 50 rounds through this gun with all of these ammunitions. But we will do a few more for the ones that we have the bulk boxes with, just because I have more ammunition available to me. Now, with the Stingers, we will shoot a little bit less than 50 rounds, solely because we did shoot a few of those rounds out of that Savage to test the ammunition with that ammo, and I only have 50 rounds of it. However, I'm not anticipating reliability issues with that ammo, because it is made very well and it's a higher velocity ammo, which means the bolt will go back further. I did all of the testing with the 223 ammo and with all of my 22 long rifle accuracy testing rounds through this AR-15A2. It has a fixed A2 sight, and I did not have the scope on it at the time, and I did all of the testing at 50 yards. So here were my results. I tested 2 ammunitions through the Savage, and those were the CCI Stinger and then Aguila Super Extra round nose, to show a high-grade ammunition and a really cheap ammunition. With the CCI Stinger, I got just under a 2-inch group, and then with the Aguila Super Extra round nose, I got right at a 2-inch group. With the Tactical 223, I also got right at a 2-inch group. So those are our controls. How did the ammunitions that we tested do? Well, I tested 7 different ammunitions. Now, I had written down all of my notes on how each of these ammunitions performed individually, but I can't seem to find that piece of paper. So if I find it while I'm editing this video, I will include that information on the screen. But if I don't, all of those ammunitions tested anywhere from about a 2.5 inches, which was the best group in the CMMG conversion kit, to about 4 inches. That range was just based on the quality of the ammunition tested. I'll put the picture of the target up on the screen. You will notice that there is one very, very large group, which is the Aguila Super Extra round nose. And that was the first ammunition I had tested that day. I just threw one of those shots. So that's why that group was so big, but if you throw out that one shot that was off target because of me, it still was within that 2.5 to 4 inch range. So that is the size of the groups, but how did the locations of the group change? Well, I forgot to change the elevation setting on my A2 before I started taking these, so I had it set for the 300 meter setting, and so with the Norma ammunition, I was about 5 inches high of where I was aiming. However, what that meant was that with the 22 long rifle ammunition, I was right on target. You'll notice that in this picture there are 2 separate groups. That's because for both of those, I was just getting too crowded on that one target, so I just started aiming at a second one. But I was aiming right at the center of that orange bullseye. So What that meant was that this ammunition was basically right on target with the conversion kit, and all of these ammunitions were still right in that target area. It looks like there is just a little shift to the right, but it's not very noticeable, at least at this range. But they did have about a 5-inch drop from the Norma 223 ammunition that this rifle was zeroed with to the 22 long rifle ammunition through the conversion kit. So if you're shooting at really close range with this conversion kit, it shouldn't really be a big issue, but if you're getting out to 50 yards and more, hopefully your sight is something like the A2 where you just turn a knob and you can slightly change the elevation setting. If it's something more complicated than that, you may need to change your point of aim in order to change your point of impact. The primary two rifles that I shot at through are the two you've already seen, the M16A1 and the A2AR. And all of the specific reliability testing I did with ammo, I did through the A2AR. There are two predominant things we need to talk about when it comes to reliability of this kit. The first is triggers, and the second is ammunition. So let's talk about the triggered issue first. This kit is designed to work with a mil-spec trigger. That is the most common AR-15 trigger, and if you buy most AR-15s that are in the lower grade, even some ones in the higher grade, they're probably going to come standard with the mil-spec trigger, and if you want something else, you will need to upgrade it. Now, this rifle has a mil-spec trigger in it. This rifle, however, did not have a mil-spec trigger. It has an upgraded trigger that came with it that I bought it. This is a police carbine that it was surplused out, so it has the police markings, and that was just how it came when I bought it. So the trigger thing is, since it is designed for a mil-spec trigger, if you shoot with this conversion kit and a non-mil-spec trigger, some ammo and trigger combinations might not work as well. Now, I would guess there are a number of triggers that I know of that use a mil-spec design, but are upgraded. Maybe they have a slightly stronger spring to get more reliable impacts, or maybe they are polished a little bit to make the trigger pull a little bit nicer. You should still be okay using this kit with those styles of trigger. But triggers that are different designs, maybe they are designed to be lighter, or they're two-stage triggers, or they're drop-in cassette-style triggers, with those you may experience issues with this conversion kit. And that's what I have to talk about today. So like I said, when I tested all of the different ammos, I was using this gun. And with some ammos, it works completely well. 50 more rounds of Aguila Super Extra round nose.
So what I found with the Herder's ammunition that I tested, it worked perfectly fine with my M16. I tested that later with the M16 because I had a lot of the ammo to test. It worked perfectly fine. However, with this rifle, I found two main problems. One, it sometimes wasn't quite powerful enough to reset the trigger all the way.
No primer hit on that one.
And two, sometimes when I would fire this gun, it didn't have enough energy to hit the primer and make it fire.
Looks like a decent primer hit.
That's because this gun has an upgraded trigger, and because of that upgraded trigger, it makes it just a little bit less reliable with that Herder's ammunition. With the Armscore ammunition, I had one failure to eject.
Failure to eject?
And I had 2 dud rounds. Again, I was using this gun, so those dud rounds might have been more due to the trigger and less due to the ammunition itself, but that is a lower quality ammunition. With the Federal ammunition, I had 1 failure to eject, and the casing of the round got stuck between the bolt while it was trying to close. Remington Golden Bullet, I had 2 failures to eject, and that ammunition I also had a lot of, and so when I tested that in both this gun and in the M16, I had issues with that ammunition in both guns and other guns that I've tested it in as well, including that Savage. It's just not very powerful ammunition, so in semi-autos it just has a hard time fully cycling the action.
Next up is Remington Golden Bullet. My hopes are low. Wow, full mag, no problem. Okay, failure to eject right there. But it did load the next round. It did not go back far enough to charge the hammer. Yeah, so that time the bolt just didn't go back far enough to actually like knock the hammer back. Just doesn't get enough velocity in this particular gun to get the bolt all the way back. So you get a lot of failures to eject.
With the CCI Stingers and the Aguila ammo, no matter what gun I was testing it in, those ammos were reliable. I've had really good luck with Aguila Super Extra. It does run dirty, but for a cheap budget ammunition, Aguila Super Extra has been what I've been choosing to go to, because I've found it to be really reliable in just about any gun that I've tested it in.
Now on to the Aguila Super Extra hollow points.
So TLDR, the issues with reliability is, 1, this is pretty common with 22, lower pressured rounds might have a hard time fully cycling the bolt. So because it has a hard time fully cycling that bolt, you may have failures to eject, and if you have a mil-spec trigger, you may have a failure to reset the trigger all the way properly. So if you have this kit and you try it in a gun and it doesn't work all the way perfectly, maybe try a different ammunition or a more powerful ammunition and you might be able to remedy that issue. Also, if you have this kit and it's not working with any ammo you test, maybe try switching out the gun. But to be clear, with high quality, high pressure ammunition, I had absolutely zero issues to function in my M16 or in any gun that I tested it with that had a mil-spec style trigger. With the mil-spec style triggers, that gave me a lot more leeway with the lower quality ammunitions too. With the upgraded triggers, with certain ammunitions, I personally still had no issue. But you may experience issues with your upgraded trigger if it is a different style or design than mine is. There's less of a standard there, and because there's less of a standard, I can't make as blanket of a statement. So next we need to talk about the construction. What I found really interesting about this conversion kit is that it's basically like they took a Marlin Model 60 design and made it fit inside of an AR-15. Let me show you what I mean. Something I need to show you really fast is how to install this kit, and I removed my upper just so that it's easier to work with on the camera, but you can do this while the pivot pin is still in and the upper and lower are still connected. You just need to pull out the takedown pin in the rear. So you take the rubber cover off the front of the kit, and then you pull the 5.56 bolt out, put in the 22 long rifle bolt, and make sure it's clicked in place, and you're good to go. And then when you're done, you just pull it right out again. And then all you need to do is use your standard magazines that come with the kit. You can also buy more of these, and they work basically exactly like an AR-15 magazine, except that they're meant for this kit. Okay, now getting into it, what I think is really interesting about this kit is that it's basically like they took a Marlin Model 60 and an AR-15 and put them together. So I have some pictures to show you on the screen what your Marlin Model 60 looks like. You can see from here that they both have a guide rod and then a spring that goes into the bolt, and then the back of the guide rod locks into a little space in the back. It's kind of cool that these guns are very similar even though they're different, and even the bolts on the bottom kind of share a similar shape, but that's pretty common with most 22 long rifles. While we're taking this apart, I'm going to point out some design things that I think are interesting. So the disassembly is really easy. You start by just pulling the bolt back, and then these two pieces right here can be pushed outward, like that. So what I like to do is get my fingers in here, push it out, and then sort of rotate this piece. Okay, then we're gonna let the bolt go forward gently so we don't bend the guide rod. Excuse me, so we don't bend the spring. The spring and the guide rod you can pull apart. You don't necessarily need to every time. The last part of the spring is just a little bit tighter on both ends, so it can go either direction, and that just makes it so that the guide rod doesn't just fall out the back. Here is the chamber area. It's interesting that the chamber slides into the chamber. So then there is the feed ramp right there, and then the space for the extractor. And then this is the piece I pried apart just to make sure you knew how to do it. I basically just pushed these two pieces outward, and that meant that they could let this piece drop freely. So this piece has your ejector, and one of the design things that I think is really interesting is that they made this so that it is tilted a little bit to the right. The right is downward. So that is what it would be like inside of the gun. And the reason for that is so that when it is inside of your AR, it means that the opening is in the same place as the ejection port. So that was a pretty smart way to get around that particular problem that they were going to have. And I bet that that also helps with ejection because it means that it ejects at an angle out the ejection port. Okay, looking at the bolt, this part is relatively what you might be familiar with an AR-15. The split pin right here is how you remove the firing pin, just like on your standard AR. Having a hard time getting to it. So you pull that split pin out, and then you have your firing pin. Now the firing pin on the CMMG kit does have a return spring right there, which should prevent it from accidentally firing when you just put a round into battery. And then you can pull out this pin that is right here, and that will allow you to remove the extractor. I don't think you necessarily need to do that though. And then this piece right here is designed to work with a charging handle so that you can use a standard T charging handle in order to charge the conversion kit. As far as I know, they do not make these kits for side charging guns with a side charging handle. Reassembly is exactly the opposite of disassembly. So you make sure that the slit in the firing pin right there is on the top. You can slide that in. And then you can put your split pin in again. Like that. Okay. Then, in this part, you do not want to bend your spring. And there's a hole right here in the back of the, I guess, the carrier, you could call it. Put that right there. You can slide this piece on. Make sure to hold your firing pin, make sure to hold your recoil spring straight when you do this. You might need to pry those pieces out just a little bit to get them around there. And then you can put this back on. Now the feed ramp is always going to go on the bottom. So the easiest way that I've found to do it, and it's really easy to do, but it's hard to do on camera since this is so far from the rest of my body, but is just to kind of roll it in there. And one of these, are they both in the right spot? One of them's not in the right spot. All right, so there you go. I have found this kit to be pretty reliable, and I haven't seen any issues of wear and tear since I've had it. Okay, now, what do I think about this kit? Is it useful? Would I recommend it? Well, I have a little over probably 500 rounds through this, maybe close to 700, and it's still holding up quite well. I ran it dirty, I ran it with different ammunitions, and I ran it in different guns, and as long as you find an ammunition and gun combo that works, this kit just runs. It might be one of my most reliable 22s. Now let's talk briefly about cost. Cost is hard to talk about because the cost of things can vary widely in different areas, and they can vary in different times, so if you watch this video 2 years from now, it may be completely different. But at the time of recording, I bought this online with this kit, and it came with 3 magazines for under $200. What that means is that by the time I have shot, 1,000 rounds through it, the kit has basically paid for itself. So if you shoot a lot of 22, or if you shoot your AR-15 and want to shoot 22 out of it, this kit is a good value. It's not expensive, and it works pretty well. I haven't seen any major wear and tear issues that have caused me to think that it's going to expire anytime soon. Now, what are the advantages of what it gives you the ability to do? Well, the first is pretty clear, and that is cost. 22 long rifle ammunition is a lot cheaper than 223 or 5.56. For the cost of 200 rounds of 223 or 5.56, you might be able to get 1,000 rounds of 22 long rifle. That balances itself out pretty quickly. So training is an advantage there. Now the issue with training is if you want to practice something like follow-up shots, this does not have anywhere near as much recoil as a standard AR. ARs don't have a lot of recoil. I'm not complaining about recoil. It's not harsh, But if you're trying to learn sight picture and reacquiring sight picture after you pull the trigger, this kit is like being on easy mode. But for things like marksmanship, trigger pull, and those kinds of things, this kit can be really useful for training. Or things like acquiring the sight picture the first time when you pull the rifle up from low ready. A second advantage of this is that this has a lot less report when you take out new shooters. If you have ever shot a AR-15 with a barrel length of 16 inches or shorter, you definitely notice it when you're standing next to it. This is especially true if it's a shorter AR. Sometimes new shooters are, whether they are children or just somebody who is not familiar with firearms, they can be kind of uncomfortable with those very, very loud noises. You might tell them to suck it up, but ultimately we want people to enjoy shooting, and their first time shooting will make a very big impact on what they think in the future. And if they're not used to recoil, this kit barely recoils at all. So if you want to show them and help them shoot an AR, this might be a good place to start them, and then once they experience how much fun it can be, you can switch out the bolt and put in a standard magazine. Another advantage of this is that you can shoot at steel close range. With 223-5.56, it's typically recommended that you don't shoot at steel closer than about 100 yards. There will be people who just tell me to be a man, and well, they can do whatever they want, but you can damage steel targets if they are at too steep of an angle if you're closer, and you can risk shrapnel coming back at you. With 22 long rifle, that safe range becomes a lot closer to 10 yards. So you can have this kit, you can practice at a much closer range, and you are not putting yourself in danger, and you're not in danger of damaging your target. Another advantage of this kit is that the back of it is right here. So in a normal AR-15, when you charge the bolt, which is what happens every time it fires, the bolt comes back, it goes into the buffer tube. This, however, is a bufferless design. While your AR bolt is going back and forth, this conversion kit, the bolt is going back and forth, but it all stays inside of that same space. Whether it is a gun that has a folding stock, or whether it's one of those neat little Han Solo pistols that people like to make, the single-shot bolt actions, if that gun is in 223 or 5.56, you can put this kit in and it'll work like a semi-auto. And I think that's pretty cool. One other training advantage of this kit is that, like I said, my drop at 50 yards was at 5 inches, and that is, well, pretty severe. So an advantage that this kit gives you is the ability to do some close range bullet drop compensation. Now, I've never trained at a range that went out to 300, 400, 500 yards because one hasn't been available to me. At the ranges available to me right now, it's hard for me to get past 100 yards. So if you want to test what it's like to deal with bullet drop compensation, a lot of those issues of long-range shooting are exaggerated when you are shooting a lower pressure, lighter, lower velocity round. It can give you training on things like windage and wind, or bullet drop compensation at longer ranges at a much closer distance. So that might be an advantage too for you. Another thing that you might think about this is small game hunting. Rifles like this Marlin Model 60 have killed a probably uncountable number of rabbits in the history of its use. In fact, it even has a little squirrel on the stock because it was used for that as well. If you put this conversion kit inside of your AR-15, like I showed, you might have a little bit of diminished accuracy, but depending on where you are, you might still be able to use it to hunt rabbits or squirrels or other small game. So if you might be interested in it for that reason, it might be good to take a rifle that you're familiar with hiking with or using for different things, also out to hunt game with it. Are there any advantages that you think that I missed? If so, leave a comment down below. Also, if you have one of these, I'm sure there will be people in the comments asking questions or trying to see if they should get one. If you haven't gotten one and you want to ask a question, I've been using it for a little while, so I might be able to answer your question for you. As usual, I hope this video was helpful, and I am 8mm Mauser Man, and I put 500 to 700 rounds through the CMMG conversion kit, but I lived on.
Which proves it's hard to get the best of a man named John.
John.